Hello and welcome to this lesson on the digestive system. In previous lessons we've looked at the lungs and we've spoken about how ventilation takes place, we've spoken about gas exchange, and we've spoken about how smoking can affect gas exchange or ventilation in the lungs. Today we're going to be looking at the digestive system. So if you write the title in your exercise books, the digestive system, as you would do for any other lesson, by the end of this lesson you should be able to state what happens during digestion. You should be able to describe the structure of the main parts of the digestive system, and you should be able to explain how parts of the digestive system are adapted for their function. Now, seems pretty obvious to say this, but remember, this is a recording. You can pause it at any time if you need to catch up with notes. The reason I say this is because some pupils have been saying to me, "Oh, sir, the lessons go too fast." Please pause the video if you're stuck with something, okay? You can, if I wipe the board clean, you can always go back and pause the video to make sure that you've got the notes down that you need. So the first key word we want to talk about today is organ system. An organ system. Now, an organ system can be defined as a group of organs working together to complete a task or a job. So an organ system is a group of organs working together to complete a task or a job. Some examples of organ systems include the circulatory system, which encompasses the heart and blood vessels in order to pump blood around your body and deliver substances. We've got the respiratory system, which is involved in gas exchange and exchanging carbon dioxide in your blood with oxygen in the air. And finally, we've also got the digestive system. These aren't all of the organ systems, they're just three examples. The digestive system. So, your digestive system is an organ system. It's made up of lots of organs that work together to complete a job. You should have looked at that in year 7. But now in year 8, we're going to look a bit more in detail at the digestive system. So we can say that the digestive system breaks down large food particles or food molecules into smaller ones and absorbs them into the blood. There are two key terms I want to define before we move on to what digestion actually is. The first one is the term insoluble. If something is insoluble, it doesn't dissolve. While soluble means that it does dissolve. Soluble means it does dissolve. Okay? Usually, or definitely in the case of digestion, if something is insoluble, it's usually a large food particle, large food molecules. Whereas if it does dissolve, it is a small food molecule. Small food molecule. Okay? So, if we go to the PowerPoint and we take this first diagram to put in our notes, then make it a bit smaller because we don't want it that big. So, here we've got a diagram of what actually happens during digestion and absorption. So the first process that is carried out by the digestive system is digestion. Now, digestion can be defined as the breakdown or the breaking down of large food molecules into smaller ones or into smaller food molecules. So if we look at the diagram that I've taken from the PowerPoint, we've got a large food molecule here that is broken down into small food molecules. Okay? Digestion makes insoluble food particles soluble. So we can put underneath here that digestion makes insoluble food molecules soluble. Okay? So it makes insoluble food particles soluble. Now, digestion, and we'll just add here because we'll be probably talking about this in a lesson or two's time. Digestion can be carried out using muscles or using chemicals. So digestion is carried out with muscles and chemicals. Okay? The muscles in your jaw can break food down as you chew it. The muscles in your stomach can contract to churn the food and break it down further. Enzymes, which are classed as chemicals, and digestive juices can break food down. So digestion on this diagram from the PowerPoint, digestion would be this arrow. So digestion. The second process carried out by your digestive system is something called absorption. Absorption. Now, absorption is when small soluble food particles, or food molecules, sorry, I need to stop saying particles. So when small soluble food molecules are moved from the small intestine into the bloodstream. So absorption is when small soluble food molecules are moved from the small intestine into the bloodstream. Now, if particles are too big, if food molecules are too big, they cannot be absorbed. So digestion has to take place first. So I'm going to put in red underneath here, and remember, red points are important points. We can say if food molecules are too big, they cannot be absorbed. Comma. So digestion must take place first. So digestion must take place first. Okay? So food is digested, where the large food molecules are broken down into small food molecules. They're gone from insoluble to soluble. And then absorption takes place, where the food particles move from inside the small intestine into the bloodstream. So absorption can go here. On this arrow. So an organ system is a group of organs working together to complete a task or a job. Examples of organ systems include the circulatory system, the respiratory system, and the digestive system. The digestive system breaks down large food molecules into smaller ones and absorbs them into the blood. Insoluble means that it doesn't dissolve. This is usually large food molecules. And soluble means that it does dissolve, which is usually small food molecules. Digestion is the breakdown of large food molecules into smaller food molecules. It makes insoluble food molecules soluble, and it's carried out using muscles and chemicals. Absorption is when small soluble food molecules are moved from the small intestine into the bloodstream. But if they are too big, if the food molecules are too big, the food particles, or the food molecules, will not move into the bloodstream. They will not be able to cross the wall of the small intestine. So, you can pause the video at any point, remember. So if you didn't get all those notes down, you are more than welcome to rewind it and pause it. So, I don't know what... Let me just... Okay. So, if we can put the subheading, please. Structures in the digestive system. Structures in the digestive system. And underline it. Structures in the digestive system. And we're going to be taking a diagram from the PowerPoint again, and we're going to be pasting it in because we're going to be referring to it. Okay? So the first structure in the digestive system is the mouth. The mouth. Now the mouth is where food's chewed and mixed with saliva. So where food is chewed and mixed with saliva. Essentially, this is where food is begun to be digested. We break the food down with our teeth as we chew it, and digestive juices are also added to it from our salivary glands. We also make the food moist so that it is easy to swallow. So we can say that food is broken down by teeth, and we'll leave it at that. That'll do, okay? Our next one is what's known as the gullet. The gullet, G-U-L-L-E-T. It's spelled here, look, G-U-L-L-E-T. And I'm going to neaten mine up because it's bothering me. Gullet. The gullet also has the name esophagus. Esophagus. O-E-S-O-P-H-A-G-U-S. The esophagus. Now, this is the pipe that connects the mouth to the stomach. So, connects the mouth to the stomach. Okay? Our next one is the stomach, which we can say is where food is mixed with digestive juices and contains acid to kill pathogens. And contains acid to kill pathogens. Now, pathogens are microorganisms that cause disease. The stomach also has muscle in its walls which contracts. So we can just put here, has muscular walls which contract to churn, C-H-U-R-N, food, to churn food. As food moves from the stomach, it goes into what's known as the small intestine. The small intestine. And this is a common misconception, so I'm going to add it in red. Once food moves into the small intestine, digestive juices from the liver and pancreas are added to the food. So we can say that digestive juices from the liver / pancreas are added to food which digest it more and neutralize stomach acid. And neutralize stomach acid. So as soon as food enters the small intestine, it's covered with these juices from the liver and the pancreas. These juices help to digest the food a bit, so it starts to digest the food. However, it also contains a strong alkali substance known as bile, which neutralizes the acid from the stomach that's still on the food. You see, your stomach contains a very special layer that prevents the acid from damaging it. Okay? However, when the acid moves into your small intestine does not have that sort of protective layer. It only has the original layers that any other organ has. Okay? So, once the food has been covered in these digestive juices, we can say that small soluble food particles or food molecules are absorbed in the small intestine. Okay? Once you've gone from the small intestine, we move into what's known as the large intestine. Put two I's. The large intestine. And this is where water is removed from food. So, where water is removed from food. We've then got the rectum after the small intestine. The rectum is where waste is stored, or where feces are stored, and I need to work out how you spell, there we go, where feces are stored. And finally, we've got what's known as the anus. And the anus is where feces are released. Okay? Where feces are released. Now, feces is a posh word for poo. When you've eaten your food and it's been digested and all of the useful substances have been absorbed from it, all the water's been drawn out, what's left behind is what's known as poo. Okay? So you eat your food, you chew it in your mouth, saliva's added to it, you swallow the food and the food moves down your gullet or your esophagus as it's correctly known. The food moves into your stomach, which contains digestive juices and stomach acid. The stomach acid kills any pathogens, which are harmful bacteria or harmful viruses on the food. Your digestive juices continue to break down the food into smaller pieces. Your stomach muscles contract to break the food down even further. This is called churning. As the food moves from your stomach into your small intestine, the food is covered with digestive juices from the liver or pancreas, and pancreas even. This does two jobs. It breaks the food down even further, and it also neutralizes stomach acid still on the food so that it doesn't damage your small intestine. The food then moves through your small intestine, and as it does, the soluble parts are absorbed into your blood. Okay? Once all the useful substances have been absorbed, the food moves into the large intestine, where water is removed from it, drying it out. This waste, whatever's left, is left in the rectum to build up as feces. You then get rid of the feces through your anus. Okay? Lovely. So, let's refresh the screen. Let's take it back to black. And let's take another diagram from the PowerPoint. So, our final bit today. You can put the subheading, moving through the digestive system. Okay, and underline it. We can start by saying that fibre, I'm going to put it in red, fibre, and I always spell it wrong, so I'm going to check. Fibre isn't digested but adds volume to your food. So fibre isn't a molecule or isn't a food substance that you can absorb directly. It essentially gives your food more volume, okay? Now this is important because it helps you push food through your digestive system. Foods such as vegetables and wholemeal bread contain a lot of fibre and therefore they prevent things like constipation. So if I post this in now, as food molecules move through your digestive system, so this could be your esophagus, it could be your small intestine, it could be your large intestine, muscles behind the food contract, pushing it further along the tube. If you have got lots of fibre in your diet, it gives this food substance more volume and therefore it's easier to push. So I'm just going to add a label on here so you know what it is. This ball here is a food or food substances. Okay? It's food substances that you've eaten. So we can say that muscles behind food in the digestive system contract to push food along. Okay? So this is kind of like when you use your toothpaste of a morning or an evening. You put your hand at the bottom of the tube and you pull your fingers along the tube to try and get more out. That's exactly how this works. You get muscles contracting behind the food, and as they contract, they push the food substance further along. So we can just put that this is like getting toothpaste out of a tube. Or it's kind of like when you eat a tip top. I don't know if that's what you guys call them, but I know I do. Like the coloured, long, frozen things that you have in the summer. Yeah, and you get blue ones, green ones, white ones. They used to be like 20p. And you cut one end off, and then you put the open end in your mouth, and as you push on the tube from the bottom, you get the tip top being forced into your mouth, and it cools you down. Okay? The more fibre you have in your diet, the easier it is for muscles to do this. So more fibre in the diet makes it easier for muscles to do this. For muscles to do this, reducing constipation. Constipation is when you can't have a poo, okay? So we'll put that as a keyword because we all like talking about it. constipation, when you can't have a poo. When you can't have a poo. Okay. Put the final subheading for today. Passing into the blood. And underline it. We can start by saying, I'm going to put it in regs, it's important. We can start by saying that soluble food particles, molecules even, not particles, soluble food molecules move through the wall of the small intestine through the wall, I'm going to tidy that up, through the wall of the small intestine into the blood. If we look back at this diagram, the first one we spoke about, the food particles have to move through this wall in order to get into the blood. Okay? So to allow this, the wall of the small intestine is very thin. So we can say the wall of the small intestine is very thin to allow this. If you think about it, that means that it's easier for the particles to cross because they don't have to travel very far to get across the wall of the small intestine. The other key factor of the small intestine is that it's very long. So we can say the small intestine is very long. In fact, it's about 22 foot long. So you have 22 foot of small intestine in your body. So we can put 22 foot. Mind-boggling if you think about it. There's 22 foot inside of you. So the fact that this is very long means that there's lots of time for absorption to take place because that food has to move along 22 foot of small intestine the whole time it can be absorbed. So we can put giving lots of time for absorption. The final thing we need to talk about are villi. Villi, and it is a key word, V-I-L-L-I. And villi are small projections of the small intestine that increase its surface area. Increase its surface area. Oh, don't know what that box is. Okay. So rather than being this sort of shape. It's not just flat. The small intestine has these folds that look like this, and that increases the surface area across which absorption can happen. So this would be a villi. Lovely. So fibre isn't digested, but it adds volume to food. Muscles behind the food in the digestive system contract to push food along. This is like getting toothpaste out of a tube. You push on the end of it to draw the toothpaste out of the open nozzle. More fibre in your diet makes it easier for muscles to push food through your digestive system, reducing constipation. Constipation is when you can't have a poo. There is diseases associated with this. If anybody knows who Brock Lesnar is, Brock Lesnar was a former WWE wrestler, and he also fought in the UFC for a while. He had something called diverticulitis, where he didn't eat enough fibre and he didn't eat enough fruit and veg, meaning that he had pockets of bacteria stuck inside of his small intestine. So rather than pushing the food all the way through, the food would stick to the walls of his small intestine, gather bacteria and cause an infection. He had to have a large part of his small intestine removed. I think it was 7 foot off the top of my head. Passing into the blood, soluble food molecules move through the wall of the small intestine into the blood. The small intestine is very long, which gives lots of time for absorption to take place. The wall of the small intestine is very thin, which allows absorption to take place. And the small intestine has villi, which are tiny projections that increase the surface area of the small intestine. So you should now be able to answer these 3 questions. You should be able to tell me how what happens during digestion. You should be able to describe the structure of the main parts of the digestive system, and you should be able to explain how parts of the digestive system are adapted for their function. If there's anything you're not sure about from this lesson today, please do not hesitate to contact me, and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Thank you for listening today. I'll see you in the next one.